Hello, it's me again, Cracker. I'm recording this on my way home from work on the highway, and it's hot outside. I got the AC on, fan up all the way, so if the audio is a bit poor, I apologize. But I wanted to make a video, and this was the best time I had to do it, so fuck it, we ball, That's what you just gotta do, you gotta do stuff even when it isn't convenient, I want to do this, and this is the time I have free to do it, and yeah, if I don't do it when it's not convenient, I'll never get it done, so here we are. I wanted to make a video talking about NPCs, and NPCs have always been kind of a weird topic that I think about a lot, because, I have a lot of empathy for my fellow man, so for me to think of somebody as an NPC, it kind of registers as wrong in my brain, because obviously everyone has their own unique story, everyone has their own thoughts and feelings that we're not aware of, yada yada yada, we all know that. But my experience with people and my experience working with people and interacting with them throughout my life has definitely shown me that there are definitely player characters and there are definitely NPCs in this world, whether it's a comfortable truth or not. That's just kind of the fact. I mean, there's people that I've known where even after I've known them for years and I've gotten to know them, I still kind of feel like they're NPCs. So just because everybody has their own story, even NPCs have lore, guys. Even NPCs have flavor text. Even NPCs have wiki entries. So just because somebody is unique does not mean that they are not still an NPC, or that they might not still be an NPC, right? And so I've thought about this in a variety of ways. One of the main things I think about is what makes somebody an NPC versus a player character, right? And I don't really have a clean cut definition. It's kind of something that you just have to feel out when you're meeting the person. Is this person real? Are they an NPC? One of the main things is their goals, what drives them, what their ideals are. There's a lot of people in this world where if you go up to them and you ask them what their ideals are, they will not understand what you mean. If you ask them what their ideals are, they're going to be like, what's that? And then you're going to explain to them, well, ideals are principles you live by, things that where if it was the ideal scenario, this is how it would be in your mind, And then once you explain that to them, they kind of give you the generic response, they're like, oh, well, I think you should treat other people well, and they give you the basic response that they were taught as a toddler, that treat other people different, and that's a programmed response, not because it's a wrong response. I mean, that's definitely a good principle to live by, but a lot of times you look at the actions of these people and it doesn't really line up with that. So it goes from being an ideal, which is if it was an ideal for them, it would be something that they would live by, something that would be evident in their behavior, right? Whereas if it's not an ideal, it'll be just something that they kind of say when asked, and something that doesn't really cross their mind any other time unless it's necessary. Which is very strong evidence that that person is an NPC, because they're treating their quote-unquote ideal like it's a programming variable, right? It's just a piece of data somewhere in their head that is brought up when it is called upon. Another thing that I like to think about is what kind of environment produces an NPC, or are NPCs produced, or are they simply like that from birth? What makes somebody, what creates an NPC, right? And I've definitely noticed there are certain environments that will push people towards NPCdom more than others. I was homeschooled growing up as a kid, but I hung out with homeschooled kids, I hung out with kids who went to private schools, and I hung out with a lot of kids that went to public school. And I can say that without a doubt, I don't think I've ever met a homeschooled kid who was an NPC. No, that's a lie. I have met some homeschooled kids that are NPCs. But on average, I would say probably 8 out of 10 homeschool kids that I've met were player characters, you're right? They knew what they were about. They had actually goals. They had ideals. They were they practiced self-actualization. And it was pretty similar for the private school kids. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 7 out of 10 of them were player characters. So maybe a little bit more NPC-dom, that just comes with being in a group of your peers constantly. I feel like if you're in a group of your peers constantly, like as a kid, like that's such a weird way to grow up, like from my point of view. Like that just kind of puts you in like this weird echo chamber where you're around a bunch of people that are like just as stupid as you are. And you don't really have a chance to reflect on what's going on. You don't really have a chance to look inward when you're in that kind of environment. So I think that's why. And I mean, then you look at the kids that went to public school, and it's like 7 out of 10 of them are NPCs. Like, not as many of them, nearly as much as the public, or as the private school, or as the homeschooled kids are player characters. Which I think says a lot about our education system. I've noticed, usually like the private school kids, they're smart. That's why they're in private school. The homeschooled kids are usually homeschooled because they're weird or their parents are weird. And the public school kids are just there because that is the default, right? Which again is very NPC-like, just to be in the default place, whether they had the option of being there or not. And I've noticed a lot, public school kids are way more susceptible to trends. Trends are another big indicator of if somebody is an NPC or not. If somebody falls, and I'm not just talking about like mimetic trends like memes and stuff like that. I'm talking about like trends that actually require you to participate in them, like fashion trends, for example. Like if you're constantly going out every few months and buying new clothes to appeal to some new trend that came out, you're probably an NPC, So yeah, that's definitely some NPC behavior for sure, constantly chasing trends. Another thing that I've thought about regarding NPCs is that an NPC is programmed, right? And programming implies a programmer, obviously. So that raises the question of who is programming the NPCs. Now, obviously, that's a pretty deep topic. I mean, I'm sure if you're watching these types of videos, you probably already have some idea in your own head of who that is. So I'm not really going to go into too deep specifics about like who I think the programmers are. Something more interesting to me is the fact that the NPCs themselves are doing the programming, right? And I do still think that there is some kind of force outside of them that is pushing them to be this way, that wants them to be these golems. Okay? But it's undeniable that the NPCs are programming themselves as well. And so the curious thing to me is, what's the ratio here? Like, are they mostly being programmed by the outside force, or is the outside force just kind of giving them a nudge and letting them do the rest, Because it seems to tend towards the latter, and that kind of leads me to believe that a lot of these people are simply born as NPCs. Because if you think about it, if everybody was born as a player character and then they had to be programmed into being an NPC, you would see the opposite. You would see people breaking out of their programming regularly, and you would see... Sorry, I'm getting like... Some guy's right on my tail. Oh, he's passing me now. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, okay, so like, you would see NPCs breaking out of their programming more if it was the case that this outside force had to constantly program them to be like this. But, I mean, you don't see NPCs breaking out of their programming that much. And I mean, when you do see them quote unquote breaking out of it, it's usually just within like approved channels. Like when somebody comes up to me and they tell me that they watch Joe Rogan and now they believe like aliens are real, like I'm not assuming that person isn't an NPC because they said that. Like they quote unquote break out of the programming, but it's within like the controlled opposition circle usually, and it's usually just a phase for them too. Like oftentimes they'll just go back to their normal programming as soon as the next directive is given to them by the hive mind, you know. So that's kind of interesting, you know. I think about it like, are they NPCs like a video game, or are they NPCs whereas it's more like the Borg from Star Trek, where some kind of outside force is, or not an outside force, where it's an internal force, you know, they're self-programming, you know. And honestly, I think about this a lot because I feel bad for the NPCs, right? I mean, I take a lot of pride in individualism and, you know, forging your own ideas, not just accepting what's thrown to you on a plate. And I wish that more people thought like that. I wish that a lot more people were willing to question things, to not just accept things. And I think it's hard for a lot of these NPCs to break out of it is because they crave the validation of other people so much, right? And that's where like the self-programming aspect of it comes in, is because like a lot of these people, you know, maybe they'd be more willing to question things if their family and their friends wouldn't call them stupid for it, right? If their family and friends wouldn't call them a stupid, retarded conspiracy theorist, you know, maybe they would try to break out of their programming more, but they feel like they kind of can't, or they feel like maybe it's not really worth it, because honestly, like, from the perspective of an NPC, like, you've got the validation of your peers, you drink the Kool-Aid, you know, you just kind of go along with things, and you're generally kind of rewarded for staying within that system. So why would you really want to break out from it? Especially if, like I said, you're an NPC, you don't really have any ideals. So even if you are a self-aware NPC, you gain that self-awareness to realize you're kind of in the system. You might just choose to stay in there and enjoy the steak, you know, just because leaving doesn't exactly give you any advantage necessarily. And another thing that I've noticed is it's getting a little bit harder to identify NPCs. Like, a lot of these niche things that you could kind of use to pick up if somebody's not an NPC, if they're kind of like tapped in, you know, are becoming like less and less, you know, like for example, the N-word, you know, if someone was willing to say nigger in conversation to you, like, that used to be a decent indicator that they're probably somebody who like is more individualistic. They don't really care what other people think about them, you know, they're not an NPC if they're willing to say nigger, right? But now Instagram Reels has kind of like made the N-word so mainstream that doesn't really apply anymore. I mean, just like certain internet speech too has become like so mainstream. Like I have this one friend who I don't think I would consider him an NPC, right? But he's definitely a normie. And he used the word "foid" in casual conversation the other day, and I like had to do a double take. I was like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about? like, why is this guy using R9K lingo?" It just like made me double take, and I was like, "What the hell are these people watching on Instagram these days?" You know. So you kind of have to be careful around people, because I mean, you can't just make the judgment anymore based on lingo. You know, if somebody is using lingo that you might consider to be based, you know, they might just be a LARPer. They might be an NPC in disguise, you know. And then when you go to actually talk to them about something that's more than surface level, they're just going to bot out at you, and they're going to call you a conspiracy theorist or something. So you do have to kind of hide your power level until you know that the person really isn't an NPC. And another thing that I want to talk about is my views on NPCs themselves, right? I hear a lot of people talking about NPCs from a place of contempt, which I think is rather stupid. Like, I don't have any contempt for NPCs. I think their beliefs are generally kind of stupid, and I think like a lot of the things that they believe and they place value on are stupid, but the people themselves, I really don't have any problem with them. Like, if you're a normie and you want to go with the flow and be an NPC, like, I don't really care. Obviously, that kind of becomes a problem when most of those people are making up the voting block, you know, the voting population, obviously, but, I mean, I don't really care at the end of the day. Like, politics is cooked any way you look at it. So that doesn't really bother me that much. So NPCs on the whole, they don't really offend me, you know. I don't think that I'm better than NPCs. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that have considered me an NPC, you know, in my interactions with them. So yeah, I don't really consider myself to be above them. I don't think like I'm some kind of higher life form. I don't think NPCs are less than human. I think NPC is a state of mind more than a race, you know? It's not like something that separates us on a base level, I guess is the best way to put it. I think every NPC has the potential to wake up. It just depends on whether they want to, whether they feel like it, whether it's something that they actually place value on, you know? Because once you start placing value on the objective truth just for the sake of truth itself, once you start placing value on freedom and individualism just for freedom and individualism's sake, that's kind of when you start to wake up from being an NPC. So, I mean, if people can do that, you know, I think they can certainly wake up. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on NPCs. I just wanted to kind of yap about that a little bit, so you get a video out. I'm going to try to make videos a bit more often. I know I've been kind of slacking on that. I just have a hard time coming up with stuff to talk about, to be honest. I mean, I have plenty of ideas in my head. It's just kind of articulating them into spoken word is kind of hard for me. And that's kind of why I made this channel, because I want to get a bit better at that. But, yeah, have a great rest of your day.